On this show, we will look at the intricacies of humankind, perhaps the peak of human achievements. No, not Ryan Reynolds. I mean, yes, Ryan Reynolds, but that's not what we're talking about. Technology. Let us look at the beauties and dangers of the ultimate human creation, as we interview some of the greatest individuals to walk the earth with us. Tucker Carlson told me you have 11 toes on your right foot. Is that correct information, or too personal and you prefer not to answer?
I mean, I have to say, when I heard that, people actually watch this show, I was actually pretty surprised.
In this episode, we will look at a man responsible for leaking government information on the NSA and draw connections to 1984 by George Orwell.
This is Roger the Shrubber. It was in 2013 that our story begins, when Edward Snowden broke the law.
Edward Snowden first worked for the NSA as a computer intelligence consultant. NSA used data and information supplied from companies like Apple and Verizon to track individuals in the United States. They claimed to have done it for the purpose of preventing terrorist attacks, but it implies they secretly spied on all people and thus stripped people of their privacy without them even knowing. Once he realized the true extent of what the NSA was doing, he released classified documents to the press and fled the US via Hong Kong to Russia, where he now resides.
One might draw connections to a book written by George something called 1984. Unsurprisingly, set in 1984, only one decade before hit Austrian TV show Inspector Rex first debuted.
I see heroes without fear, killing thunder, empty streets, time to hide in dirty caves.
I got the rare chance to talk with the man himself, Edward Snowden. So what is the NSA? My producers tell me it's the Nantucket soup.
NSA and the intelligence community in general is focused on getting intelligence wherever it can by any means possible, that it believes on the grounds of sort of a self-certification that they serve the national interest. Originally, we saw that focus very narrowly tailored as foreign intelligence gathered overseas. Now, increasingly, we see that it's happening domestically.
The telescreen received and transmitted simultaneously. Any sound that Winston made above the level of a very low whisper would be picked up by it so long as he remained within the field of vision which the metalpack commanded, he could be seen as well as heard. There is of course no way of knowing whether you were being watched at any given moment, how often, or on what system the sort belief plugged in on any individual wire was guesswork. It was even conceivable that they watched everybody all the time.
The telescreen was used by the government of Ingsoc to keep a close eye on every doing of its people. This gave the government total control over every aspect of their life. And in the end, it really just, the people of Ep.1 were completely powerless for every doing. Everything they did was watched. Everything they did was closely followed. We, of course, do not live in a dystopia. But we very well might.
Not all analysts have the ability to target everything, but I, sitting at my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone, from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email.
Edward, you are relatively talentless, yes? So what do you really want for the public?
I don't have special skills. I'm just another guy who sits there day to day in the office, watches what's happening, and goes, this is something that's not our place to decide. The public needs to decide whether these programs and policies are right or wrong. And I'm willing to go on the record to defend the authenticity of them and say, I didn't change these. I didn't modify the story. This is the truth. This is what's happening. You should decide whether we need to be doing this.
So, as someone who's whistleblown before, yes, brother to brother, why'd you do it? Because in my experience, it's quite loud and rather annoying.
When you're in positions of privileged access, like a systems administrator for these sort of intelligence community agencies, you're exposed to a lot more information on a broader scale than the average employee. And because of that, you see things that may be disturbing, but over the course of a normal person's career, you'd only see one or two of these instances. When you see everything, you see them on a more frequent basis. And you recognize that some of these things are actually abuses. And when you talk to people about them, in a place like this, where this is the normal state of business, people tend not to take them very seriously and move on from them. But over time, that awareness of wrongdoing sort of builds up, and you feel compelled to talk about it. And the more you talk about it, the more you're ignored, the more you're told it's not a problem. Until eventually you realize that these things need to be determined by the public, not by somebody who was simply hired by the government.
Edward Snowden, in particular, is an interesting case. He chose to take himself out of a relatively safe situation. He was in Hawaii, and instead released classified government documents to the public. And of course, Edward Snowden did something truly remarkable, something we'd never expect to see from our dearest Winnie baby.
As soon as Winston had dealt with each of the messages, he clipped his speak-written connections to the appropriate copy of the Times and pushed them into the pneumatic tube. Then, with a movement which was as nearly as possible unconscious, he crumpled up the original message and any notes that he himself had made and dropped them into the memory hole to be devoured by the flames.
But why? Let's ask Winston himself.
Right, so Winston. Shall I call you Winston? Some people prefer, obviously, a little more formal. Yes, thank you. All right. So, Winnie baby, why didn't you whistleblow?
I didn't whistleblow because I didn't think it would be much help. I feel like it would just be ineffective in a place like Airstrip 1. It's like when Tottenham sacked Antonio Conte. That they're still absolute. And even when a bomb drops, something like that, people don't react. They're just brainwashed, and I don't even know.
We see an interesting distinction between Winston and Edward Snowden, largely due to the different circumstances they're in, and also, to a large part, their dedication towards serving the public. So what exactly are we supposed to learn from this? I, for one, have no clue what is going on.
Edward, why should I be giving a flying about if you creepy men are looking at me through my phone?
Even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're being watched and recorded. And the storage capability of these systems increases every year consistently by orders of magnitude, to where it's getting to the point you don't have to have done anything wrong. You simply have to eventually fall under suspicion from somebody, even by a wrong call, and then they can use the system to go back in time and scrutinize every decision you've ever made, every friend you've ever discussed something with, and attack you on that basis to sort of derive suspicion from an innocent life and paint anyone in the context of a wrongdoer.
With those children, he thought that wretched woman must lead a life of terror. Another year or 2 years, and they will be watching her day and night for symptoms of unorthodoxy. Nearly all children nowadays were horrible. What was first of all that by means of such organizations such as the spies, they were systematically turned into ungovernable little savages. It was almost normal for people over 30 to be frightened of their own children.
The youngish Mrs. Parsons embodies us and all of the oppression and torment that we very well may face. A face of an ugly, ugly boy with bad hair.
On a more personal level, Edward, what's a fun fact about you? Because, so me personally, for example, I have a fear of, you know when you're like just eating peanut butter straight out of the jar with a spoon, yes, and it starts sticking to the roof of your mouth, and then for the rest of the day you're just like, do you have something like that?
The greatest fear that I have regarding the outcome for America of these disclosures is that nothing will change. People will see in the media all of these disclosures. They'll know the lengths that the government is going to grant themselves powers unilaterally to create greater control over American society and global society. But they won't be willing to take the risks necessarily to stand up and fight to change things, to force their representatives to actually take a stand in their interests. And the months ahead, the years ahead, it's only going to get worse until eventually there will be a time where policies will change, because the only thing that restricts the activities of the surveillance state are policy. Even our agreements with other sovereign governments, we consider that to be a stipulation of policy rather than a stipulation of law. And because of that, a new leader will be elected. They'll flip the switch, say that because of the crisis, because of the dangers that we face in the world, you know, some new and unpredicted threat, we need more authority, we need more power, and there will be nothing the people can do at that point to oppose it, and it'll be turnkey tyranny.
We can go down this path, the path we're already on, and face the danger of living in a world with control, dictatorship, and no freedom. Or we can take this path, a different path. We can face this issue, take it by the horns. We can do what Edward Snowden has already set in place. And we can hopefully live in a world where there is freedom and justice. There's more paths, God damn it.
It is our responsibility to take action and stand up for our internet privacy. We must not take what Edward Snowden has done for granted. With lack of our privacy, there is no given how our future as a nation will look. We must take advantage of open source software and join the cause for the far too overlooked internet privacy. It may take a long time, but we must make a change while we still can.
But for right now, I'm tired. I'm gonna go home.